Yeah, absolutely excited to have Sam of the Paper Kites on the podcast today. How have things been going for you?
Really good. We just put out a new record 2 weeks ago now, I think, and hit a few milestones that we haven't done before. We got a number one record in our country, which was really nice. And then just cool things like we did some shows in the round, which we haven't done before, where we just booked a bunch of really small venues and just played the record from start to finish in the middle of the room, and everyone sat around. And it was a really beautiful way to launch a record. We haven't thought of doing that before, but people seem
Yeah.
to really like the intimacy of it all.
Yeah, that's amazing. The intimacy of those like small rooms. And I've noticed more artists kind of doing that, like where they'll be kind of in the center and kind of surrounded by everybody. It definitely makes for a much more closer connection with people, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Just kind of breaking down that wall between performer and audience. It's all kind of at the same level.
yeah. So usually where I start is, try to get a little bit of, I guess, background. When you were growing up, what kind of music were your parents listening to? What kind of music did you gravitate towards once you kind of found your own ear, so to speak?
hmm Yeah, I mean, my parents were. I mean, there was music around the house. My mum sung in church, so she was kind of always bringing in that kind of music into the house, and that was really the majority of what we were hearing as kids was kind of a lot of music that was rooted in like gospel and things like that. And then when I kind of in my early teen years, I discovered punk music that kind of felt like a direct opposition to that kind of thing. And I remember I was really into like, it was a kind of niche period in Australian music, but there were bands like The Living End, rockabilly punk, that just seemed to resonate with a young man of
Yeah.
that age. And I went to a show, and it was the first show I'd ever been to, and it was in this record store. And that was back in the day when they had like CDs lining the walls instead of whatever they have now. And people just went wild at that show. They kind of ripped all the CDs off the wall and stomped on them. And you could see the owner
Yeah.
of the record store just head in his hands. And that was the first time I was like, oh, this is cool. This is, there's some power in this kind of music. And it just
Yeah.
makes people go a little wild. So I was drawn to that. I was kind of drawn to the chaos of it all. And that was really what I consumed mostly through my teenage years. And that's kind of where it started for me. There were other bands that kind of made their way into my kind of peripherals. Like I gravitated towards guitar. I kind of started on drums and piano, but guitar was, yeah, sort of when I hit 13, I just picked up a guitar, and I didn't have lessons or anything. I just sort of, you know, worked out how to play a few things. And yeah, guitarists like BB King seemed to appeal to me, and Peter Green, and even like players like Angus Young. I loved as a kid. It's just, what is
Yeah.
this? This is cool. But then yeah, that's kind of how it started for me, and then I had a very strange transition into the folk world, really just by
Yeah.
attending like a kind of university and realizing that there were all these singer songwriters, and I had no idea who anybody was talking about. So I got a very
Mm.
steep education in that kind of music.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think I kind of went through something mildly similar. Like I went through a punk heavier phase when I was a kid. I listened to like Rise Against, early Rise
hmm
Against, and like artists like like Rage Against the Machine phase and stuff like
Is it?
that.
Do you think there's
And
something about like being that age that music just seems to like resonate a little more?
yeah, there definitely has to be because like I mean maybe it's the transition into adulthood and things of that. But yeah, it was like Rise Against, Rage Against the Machine, Metallica, a heavy
hmm
Linkin Park phase, had a Meteora poster on my wall. And then, transitioned into like a little lighter stuff. And then now, I've kind of landed myself in this, folk indie niche, I suppose.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm curious. So you guys have been putting out music since 2013, if I remember correctly. Maybe before that.
2010, yeah, 2010 was kind
Okay.
of the first release of music. Yeah,
Okay.
first record was
And
2013.
that's right. Maybe do you have any like thoughts on how maybe the indie folk space has kind of evolved over this 15 years, 16 years, I guess.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's never gone away completely, and it's always really been there, even even through the 90s when kind of grunge and boy bands and girl bands were at the forefront of people's minds. It's always been there as a very direct vehicle to communicate with people. And when we started, it was kind of having this renaissance again. You had Australian bands like the Middle East that were kind of holding the torch for that kind of music, and yeah, I suppose internationally you had bands like Mumford and Sons, and I mean they were a very extreme example of I suppose the popularity of that music at the time. Guitars were
Yeah.
back in, and people wanted to come to shows and just kind of listen to music, as opposed to what I was used to prior to that. I suppose playing in punk bands and listening to that kind of music is that people just want to kind of rage and have a good time. And so the
Mm,
concept of an audience quietly listening to music was very novel and kind of something that I wanted. But yeah, in terms of the scene, those bands were kind of there in Melbourne. I think of Angus and Julia Stone as well. Bands like the Waifs, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're very well loved in Australia. And then we've got guys like Paul Kelly, who's kind of our Bob Dylan. He's a very well loved and respected songwriter. And so that kind of music, at least in my memory, has always sort of been there in its different shapes and forms. It was always kind of just nice, It wasn't the folk of old where they were really kind of saying something. It was just kind of nice music. And to be fair, like we were guilty of that too. We're kind of just playing songs that felt like these gentle expressions. But no, now you've got guys like Jesse Wells who are doing the folk thing and like really saying something, and that's a very bold approach and something that is to be um, I think respected and listened to as well, because that was how it began, at least in the 60s and 50s, and even before that. When you go all the way back to blues, it was people that were saying things. They were saying things about their own lives, and they were saying things about what was happening around them. And it's really nice to see that kind of music still happening and still being around. And of course, as I said, it's never gone away. But it seems once again that guitar music is having a little moment at the moment. You got
yeah.
bands like Geese and I don't know, Amyl Sniffers, like punk music, and just like people that are saying things in their music is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is funny. There's like this I don't know, parallel line of this I don't want to call it protest like folk music, but definitely folk music where they're trying to say something, directly to you, and almost like this whimsy category of folk music that like they see they kind of run alongside each other, and occasionally they'll cross paths, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting space. Especially nowadays, you figure artists like Noah Khan's probably like as peak as it is at the moment in terms of that space, I feel like. And then yeah, you have artists like Jesse Wells, and um I listened there's an album that comes to mind from uh Max Garcia Conover and Haley Hendricks that they just recently put out, that's very like trying to say something, speaking on the current events of the world and things like that. So it's a fun space to consume music, for somebody like me. So you guys, seventh studio album.
Mm.
If you go there, I hope you find it. What are some of like the overarching themes behind the album? Having listened to it, I have my personal favorites off of it, but yeah, I'd just love to hear you kind of touch on what went into it and just kind of what's it about?
Yeah, I mean, it's as the title suggests, it's an album of searching and looking for belonging, and for me at least, um, having to kind of answer a lot of these questions that I hadn't really thought about. You know, I mean, I obviously have an idea of um, what I want to say and what I think the record should sound like, but I normally don't delve too deeply into the themes of the records, only because I'm very happy to let people think what they'll think, and I'm happy to let songs fall how they will for the listener. But I did realize that this is kind of our first record that inherently feels like home. I think we've had a lot of records previously that have just felt like elsewhere to me, and often that's because they have been made elsewhere. You know, we've made records in Seattle and in Connecticut, and the most recent record prior to this one was in a small country town in Australia. That was the Roadhouse record, and so none of them have really felt particularly grounded in a sense of home. But this record, I mean, as you probably heard somewhere, we rehearse out on a farm in a place called the Yarra Valley, which is a beautiful country, uh, beautiful part of the country, wine country, so a lot of rolling hills and such. And I would normally be writing in a place like this that I'm in now, but I didn't have this at the time. Our house was being renovated, so I had nowhere to write music. And a friend of ours offered this space at the farm just for the year to write, and so a lot of these songs came together there. And it was off the back of having finished a record that I thought we would be doing next. Um, that was, you know, like, I guess a little darker a direction, which I was kind of interested in. And then I showed the guys the songs, and it wasn't so much a we don't like this. It was more a I don't know if we want to move on to this yet. We kind of feel like we really enjoyed what we did on Roadhouse, and that kind of thing we do really well. And I think there was just something pulling everyone back, saying there's something that needs to happen first before we move on to this other record. And so I had to start from scratch and started working on all these songs. And we had this kind of crisis meeting where we all sat in this room, and everyone was kind of like, well, what are we going to do next? You know, what is it that we actually value about making music? And we ended up with this kind of vision board of all these phrases that were just things that over the years we'd come to believe we do well, and we value, and it's important to us. And so I kind of had that going into writing these songs. And I don't know, the way it came together, it just, the songs themselves just really felt very rooted in this place that we now live, and that we have put our roots down. And you know, that's a difficult thing for musicians to do. I think you're often traveling, and um, it's very difficult to hold down a stable life outside of touring all the time and playing these shows. And we're very lucky that we've been able to do that. And that's credit to our idea of family, and our values and what we think is important outside of just being a musician. And so the record ended up being this kind of I don't know, like homage to our families, and a place that we have found, and that we've found acceptance and belonging in.
Yeah, I am curious, like in terms of everything you do outside of being a musician. Is that, I mean, have done it for a while now. Is there a good balance to being able to be a musician in one hand and have a family or a whole other life? It feels like outside of that. Have you found a good balance over time with that?
Yeah, yeah, it's been something that has been and is still being finessed, because it's not always easy, you know, and especially now that a lot of us have families, and some of us, well, all of us have kids. You know, balancing that is really just a, I think it's a question of how much time do you want to be away, and when you're home, how present are you, and how much you're able to be there. Especially as a songwriter, I mean, anyone that works in any kind of creative industry would know that inspiration strikes at all manner of hours, and you can really get caught up in it. You know, you can really just uh, because it is a selfish thing, because you do need to be selfish in order to pull these songs out. And you know, there has to be a line when family comes into it, and you got to kind of treat it like a job a little more, as opposed to I feel inspired and so I must write. You know, it's had to change for me. Um, Luckily, I have a weird room that has is now kind of my sanctuary, and it's kind of like the Narnia room of the house. It doesn't look like any other space in the house, but it is a place that I can work, and I can come in here and kind of treat it like the job that it is, and then walk out and just be present and be a part of where I am. So the separation is important, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would I mean as someone who I think, you know, is trying to still find that balance myself, I would agree, like having a space where you feel like you could kind of shut the door and kind of leave, you know, really try to leave it, even if it's like this um you know, odd physical, you know, visualization of it. I think it matters for sure. So when you're writing songs in terms of the Paper Kites, is it a solo process, or do you end up, is it turn into this big collaborative piece as the album kind of comes together?
It's a little of both. It has previously most of the time just been me taking, you know, a few months at a time to write as many songs as I'm able to, and I present them to the rest of the band, and we go through them together, and we have very long conversations about what we feel is right and wrong for the record, and that's quite a process. But we also have had times more recently that we have been able to collaborate on songs a little more. Not too many. I would love to do a little more of it, but I'm also just very I like to write by myself. I don't do a lot of co-writing with other people. I just kind of find it dilutes the process a little bit. Purely speaking, to you know, what I want to do and what I want to express. And it's not to say that other people don't have wonderful ideas. I think I've just from the get go, when we started, I was very aware of yeah, just it becoming something that wasn't of me, due to perhaps other influences. Um, and that even happens in earlier music. You know, you're drawing from all these different things, and if you draw from them too much, when you listen to them, they just kind of feel like that thing that you were drawing
Mm,
from. It doesn't necessarily
sure.
feel like the best expression of yourself. And so I'm learning as I get older, and as I work more by myself, that I kind of just need to put my blinkers on, and not be too distracted by even what I'm listening to myself, but what else is out there and other people's opinions. It's really just a matter of shutting it all out. And the rest of the members in the band are people that I trust, and I value their opinion. But at the same time, you know, when you are the one presenting the songs, it's very difficult to have four other people that have the same ideas as you, and the same inspirations, and have seen what you've seen and have lived what you've lived. It's, you know, it's a very delicate thing to for us to kind of choose songs and to go through them when I'm presenting them. But we've managed over the years to kind of find a nice balance, I think, and a healthy level of respect for the songs and the opinions of all. Yeah, it seems to work.
Yeah. Do you find songwriting in general just to be like this almost like therapeutic process for you?
Um, it's a lovely thing to say,
Hmm.
but a lot of the time it's hard work. You know,
Yeah.
I'm very careful to speak about songwriting like it's just this beautiful emotional release. And you know, when you listen back to a finished song, it does, there is healing in that, I think, because you've managed to pull something out that you needed to get out. And so I think that that's important. But it's work as well. I would never want to say that it's not.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. In terms of, I guess, going back to the album, and you know, selfishly, one of my favorite songs off of the album is one called "Deep" in the Plans We Made. Um, I would just love a little bit, on the background of that one, and what kind of, yeah, what kind of went into that, making that one.
Mm. Yeah, that was a late addition to the record as well, I think. And I knew I wanted a song that the three of us, Christina, Dave, and myself, could just sing, that was kind of harmonies through the whole thing. I think I'd just been listening to, like Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young, um, that were able to track these songs like that. And we'd really wanted to track a live record, all being in the room is what I mean, still in the studio, but um, just not caring so much about the imperfections, and trying to allow ourselves to be a little more vulnerable towards, yeah, just the natural sound of our voices and not getting it perfect. And that song was born out of a conversation with Christina, I think. And she was just talking about, like, we need a song that kind of talks about how kind of deep we've gotten into our lives with our partners, and especially when kids come into the mix, you just kind of have these moments where you realize, man, we really, like, there's no turning back now. We're really in it right now, and kind of dug this hole for ourselves. And it's a beautiful thing, can be. Most of the time it is. But you know, y- it's something that you're in it together, and to get out of that hole is very painful, and it's almost just like, that first line, if you go, I'll go with you, what else would I do? Like, it's realizing that we're so deep in these these plans that we've made for our lives, that the thought of trying to get out of them, it just seems unthinkable. And so the lyrics were written straight after that conversation, and I had to go to the supermarket. And funnily enough, I ran into Christina at the supermarket.
Hmm.
Uh, we're in the yogurt aisle, and I said, I think I've got it. I showed her the lyrics, and she's like, yeah, this is it. And the song was done. It's great.
Amazing. Yeah, it's funny how songs can just kind of, fall out like that in ways. So again, kind of going back to how long you guys have been making music, it does. Do you find the social media side of things that it's kind of turned into to be exhausting? Is it something you particularly enjoy, or is it just kind of another part of the job that is being a musician nowadays?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been wrestling with that question a lot lately, because I mean, you'll see a lot of artists complaining about, rightfully so, that they feel they've had to become content creators over, you know, making music, which is what we want to do. That's what we are passionate about, and so yeah, I find the balance very difficult. And social media in general is it's not for me. I have to use it as a tool for my job, especially if I value communicating with the people that listen to our music, which I do. But if I had the choice, I would just not use it. Uh, I think that it does a little more harm than good, and I understand the need to keep in contact with people and to show them what you're doing, and how I wish we could just be an elusive band that just never communicated with anybody and just kind of did our thing. But unfortunately, the position that we're in is that people want to know everything that they can know. And I don't think that's
Yeah.
necessarily a good thing. And so I'm very protective of, yeah, over explaining things, and showing too much of ourselves. I just don't think it's necessary. I think the music should speak for itself, and I don't want to compete with everybody that's sort of just making a lot of noise all the time. I'm very happy to just sort of sit back and just let the music do its thing. But yeah, it's a really difficult time because you want to walk that line of being an artist and putting the time into your craft, and you have labels and teams that are saying you need to show people more, you need to give them more, we need more content. And I think that just goes against what we value, and that is kind of slow art and thoughtful art and things that have been carefully carefully created and are designed to be consumed in a slow way. And I still hold on to that, and I don't really care or mind if that goes against what people, even our fans, want. But I think that the people that listen to our music and the people that are still, listening to records from start to finish, I don't think that's in jeopardy personally, even if there's other ways that people want to consume it, if they're like just singles or the way things going with AI and how that's going to affect art. I still think that there's going to be, plenty of people out there that value, the humanity of the thing and the slowness of the thing. Yeah, so it doesn't worry me too much.
Yeah, amazing, honestly, because I think, yeah, in a world that feels like it's constantly, trying to speed you up, I do think, uh, kind of having that slow art, even that slower, music at times to listen to goes a long way, in a lot of ways. So, and I do think you guys were not, I don't want to say lucky per se, but you've had, it was kind of nice to have that base ahead of time before, it was required of you, right? To have social media and to like build yourself through music and the internet at the same time in ways.
Yeah,
So,
and that's not a luxury that a lot of new acts have, and you
mhm.
see it, don't you? It's really difficult to break through past a certain level when you haven't had years before all of this stuff was important to kind of build on your I suppose the lore of the band and the lore of what you do and what you're about. And that's done by not giving everything away, by not showing every minute of every day and every moment, on the internet. I think that's a really challenging thing that new artists have to face
Yeah.
is there still room for mystery? Is there still room for um not overselling every moment of your life?
Yeah, that is one thing. You brought up Geese earlier. I feel like that's one thing that uh, their frontman Cameron Winter has done pretty well. Is like there's a level of like unknown about him that I think intrigues people to a certain extent. Um, so the next one I usually get into is let's say you were teaching a music class and you had 4 or 5 albums that were required listening specific to your taste. What would those 4 or 5 albums be?
Wow, that's a big question. That's a hard question. I'd be very interested what other people have said. Now, am I trying to influence these kids and turn them onto what I think is important, or am I trying to give them a
Yeah,
broad taste?
I would say it's kind of specific to what you feel is important.
Hmm. Hmm. That's tricky. I mean, like I just feel like the Beatles must be in there. You've got to have them in there somewhere. I'm trying to get my son into them at the moment. I just think whether you're a songwriter or just a music listener, and people trash the Beatles, and like some of the personalities I understand were a little questionable. Um, but that's a great example of a band that kind of started as this boy band essentially, and really flourished as artists, I think, through the 9 or 10 years they were releasing music. Let's say I'm an Abbey Road guy, Sergeant Pepper's, one of those records. Great record to have. Man, just trying to think of what are we doing here? Joni Mitchell, it has to be Joni. If you want to know about how to put feelings into songs and wild melodies and how to express yourself, Blue, it's got to be Blue. That's a great record. That'd be number two. Number three, I mean, you got to have an understanding and appreciation for the blues. I feel if you are to play any kind of music, you've got to understand where it's come from, and you've got to understand the many transitions and the breakoffs of country and soul and R&B and hip hop and pop music, where it's all kind of come from. I mean, you could choose any of those records, but I think, man, an album like BB King live at Cook County Jail is such a good record. That's a really great live record and amazing playing. And whilst he's not one of the earliest blues players, of course, he still, I think, carried the spirit and kind of turned a lot of people on to that kind of music. So that would be in there for sure. I'm a big Nick Cave fan. You'll see him there. I think he's, as he ages and everything that he's been through, I think his music just seems to carry more weight for me. I'm a big fan of Push the Sky Away or The Boatman's Call. I think they're both killer records. Either one of those. Lastly, what have I not covered yet? So many things. That's such a hard question.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, there's just so much, so much. I wanna be careful with picking too many male artists because you got to have a balance. You got to have a balance. Etta James is so good, man. Etta James. If you listen to like At Last, that whole record is an incredible record. I'm gonna stick with Etta.
Yeah, I think that's a great five, as good a five as we've had. It's definitely a tough on the spot question to try to come up
Mm.
with some stuff.
Oh yeah,
Um, but yeah, did really well, I do believe.
great.
The social media folks will tell us how good you have or have not done.
I
So
see some nice records behind you as well. You get the Doors
yeah,
there. Is that
yeah,
Cosmos
that's
Factory too?
yeah, Cosmos
Right
Factory. Yep,
on,
I got
man.
Father John Misty's up there. Some
Yeah,
other
great record.
favorites. So then the next one we usually get into is in terms of the Paper Kites discography. What song are you most proud of?
In terms of the whole discography,
Hmm.
that's a big question. Um, I'll give you two. Um, I'll give you "Shake Off the Rain" from the most recent record, um, and only because doing this record was off the back of At the Roadhouse, and we asked a few friends to join the band for that project, and there was eight members of the band, and we toured like that for 2 years, and so it was a big sound, and we kind of came to rely on those musicians for the sound of the band, and so coming back to just the five of us was really it was a little daunting. There were feelings of, can we still sound great with just the five of us, and that was one of those songs where just playing it with the five of us, it was a really like comforting kind of thing, realizing that, oh, this is us. This is kind of what we do. And I think that's just a really lovely representation of a band that's kind of grown through the years and is very comfortable with where they've kind of found themselves. The other song, I think of songs like a song called Neon Crimson. It's on an album called 12/4. Very raw song, a very, very kind of sad song to play because of where I remember myself being at the time. But yeah, it's just one that stands as something that I'm proud of writing, and I don't really
Yeah,
have any kind of technical reason other than I'm 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 glad that it exists.
yeah, love that.
Yeah.
And then I live my life in music curation, so I always ask a song or a project that you've just kind of really been into recently.
Mm, yeah. Just trying to think. I'm always listening to records. I've always got something happening. Books are kind of what has taken over everything at the moment. I'm reading a lot of books. Um, but yeah, music. Let's think. We have some friends of ours from London, a band called Flight, and they put out a record recently. The name is now eluding me. They're going to be really down my throat for not remembering what the record called. Anyway, if you look up their most recent record, it's got to be one of my favorite records of recent times. And Dave actually does He does a playlist, a monthly playlist, and he's mentioned that record as well as one of his favorites. And it's just like it's inherently English, very cozy record, but the songwriting is just like top tier songwriting for me. I just think it's stunning. That and Phil Cook, who is a pianist from your side of the world, released a record called Appalachian Blues. It's just a piano record, instrumental, but it's really incredible. It's just nice to not have to think about what someone is saying for a while and just listen to pure feeling through his
Yeah.
beautiful playing. It's an amazing record as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to take a listen to the Phil Cook one. I do believe I think I've listened to the Flight album. I'm almost positive. I can't think of the name either, but I'm 99% sure I've heard it. Um,
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
and then it kind of wrapping up. You know, you guys you have the new album out. What else can everybody look forward to? And yeah, what do you got going on?
I mean, immediately when a record is out, I'm on to the next thing. You know, I don't want to really want to revel in it's out. You know, it's kind of yep, enjoy. I'm on to the new thing. Um, I don't know. I mean, we have a record that is written. Whether that is the next thing we're going to do, I'm not sure. There is talk of maybe doing a follow up to Roses, which is a record that was comprised of duets with lots of different artists. And you know, with just traveling around, you make a lot of friends and people that you think, gee, it'd be great to do a song together one day. So
Yeah,
that's bubbling in my mind is maybe a follow up to that record. Yeah, scoop.
amazing. Yeah, I got the scoop. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your morning and sitting here and talking to me. And yeah, I love the album, and catch you guys stateside again sooner or later. But yeah, I appreciate you taking time.
Yeah, no problem. Really nice to talk to you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.